My name is Trevor. I'm the assistant manager at Wheat Rye, an artisanal bakery nestled between a vintage bookstore and a coffee shop in the kind of gentrified neighborhood where people don't mind paying $8 for a loaf of sourdough. It's a good job, better than good, actually. The owners, an older couple named Frank and Diane, treat their employees like family. The hours are reasonable, the pay is decent, and I get to take home day-old pastries that would make a French pâtissier weep. At 32, I've made peace with the fact that this might be my career rather than the stopgap I envisioned when I dropped out of culinary school 5 years ago. I'm good at what I do. I know how to manage inventory, train new staff, and handle the morning rush with a smile that doesn't betray how much I'd rather be back in bed. I take pride in running a tight ship, which is why what happened that Tuesday evening in late October caught me so off guard. We were 15 minutes from closing. Rain lashed against the windows, turning the street outside into a blur of headlights and umbrella silhouettes. Inside, the bakery was warm and fragrant with the day's final batch of cinnamon rolls cooling on the racks. Melissa, our newest hire, was mopping the floor while I counted the register. Only 2 customers remained, an elderly woman lingering over her tea in the corner and a man I hadn't noticed come in, browsing near the bread display. Something about him caught my attention. Perhaps it was the way he kept glancing toward the counter, or how his rain-soaked jacket seemed too thin for the October chill. He was tall, with dark hair curling damply against his neck, and the kind of lean build that could be naturally athletic or simply underfed. When he turned slightly, I caught his profile: strong jaw, straight nose, the suggestion of stubble along his cheeks. I returned to my counting, but kept him in my peripheral vision. He moved with a strange hesitancy, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched as if trying to make himself smaller. Then, in a movement so swift I almost missed it, he slipped a loaf of our walnut bread into his jacket. My first instinct was to call him out immediately. Theft was theft, and principles mattered. But something, intuition, perhaps, or just curiosity, made me wait. I finished counting the register, locked the drawer, and nodded to Melissa that she could head to the back to empty the mop bucket. Then I approached him casually. "Finding everything okay?" I asked, stopping a few feet away. He startled, eyes darting to the exit. They were blue, I noticed, a deep indigo that contrasted sharply with his pallor. "Just looking," he said, his voice rough around the edges. "You're closing soon, right?" 15 minutes, I confirmed. "Plenty of time if you need a recommendation." He shook his head, taking a step toward the door. "I should go. Before or after you pay for the bread in your jacket?" He froze, color draining from his face. His hand moved automatically to his side, where the outline of the loaf was clearly visible beneath the damp fabric. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but there was no conviction in it. "Look," I said, keeping my voice low so the tea-drinking woman wouldn't overhear. "I'm not interested in making a scene, but that's a $7 loaf of artisanal bread you're trying to walk out with." For a moment, I thought he might bolt. His eyes darted to the exit again, calculating. Then, unexpectedly, his shoulders slumped. Defeat rippled across his features as he reached into his jacket and withdrew the bread. "I'm sorry," he said, placing it on a nearby table. "I don't usually. I'm not a thief." Something in his expression, a mixture of shame and desperation, gave me pause. This wasn't some teenage shoplifter looking for a thrill. This was a grown man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Wait here," I said, making a split-second decision. I walked back to the counter, grabbed a paper bag, and returned to where he stood. "What's your name?" He hesitated, then, "Dylan." "Okay, Dylan. I'm Trevor, assistant manager." I picked up the walnut bread and added 2 chocolate croissants from the day-old tray. "These would just get donated tomorrow anyway," I explained, handing him the bag. "No need to steal what we'd give away." Confusion clouded his features. "You're not calling the police? For a loaf of bread? That seems excessive." I studied him for a moment. "But I am curious why someone would risk getting arrested over this particular item. We have cheaper options, you know." Dylan's gaze dropped to the floor. "My daughter, it's her favorite. Her 6th birthday is tomorrow." The simple explanation hit me harder than I expected. I thought of my own childhood, of birthdays celebrated with whatever discount cake my mother could afford after paying rent. "Take it," I said, pressing the bag into his hands. "And happy birthday to your daughter." Gratitude and shame warred on his face. "I can't." "You can't," I insisted. "Consider it a birthday gift from Wheat Rye." He accepted the bag with trembling hands. Thank you. He trailed off, seemingly at a loss for words. It's just bread, I said, though we both knew it was more than that. After he left, I found myself distracted during closing, replaying the interaction. There had been something compelling about Dylan, beyond the obvious desperation that had driven him to steal. Perhaps it was the naked vulnerability in his eyes when he mentioned his daughter, or the dignity he'd maintained even in his embarrassment. I didn't expect to see him again. People who get caught stealing usually avoid returning to the scene. So when he walked through the door 3 days later, just before the afternoon rush, I was genuinely surprised. He looked marginally better, clean-shaven, his dark hair neatly combed, wearing a button-down shirt that had seen better days but was carefully pressed. He carried a small envelope and scanned the bakery until his eyes found mine behind the counter. Hi, he said, approaching with visible nervousness. I wanted to return this. He placed the envelope on the counter. It's $7 for the bread. And thank you for the other day. Lily loved it. Lily's your daughter? I asked, making no move to take the money. He nodded, a hint of a smile softening his features. She said it was the best birthday bread ever. Birthday bread, I repeated, amused. That's a new one. She's at that age where anything can be special if you present it the right way. The fondness in his voice was unmistakable. I pushed the envelope back toward him. Keep it. Like I said, consider it a gift. I can't do that, he insisted. I've already taken advantage of your kindness once. Something about his stubborn dignity intrigued me. Tell you what, I said, struck by a sudden impulse. Use it to buy her a proper dessert. I gestured to our display case. The cupcakes are on special today. He hesitated, glancing at the brightly frosted treats. Are you sure? Absolutely. And if you have a minute, I'd love to hear how the birthday went. The words were out before I could analyze why I wanted to know, why I was prolonging this interaction. To my surprise, he stayed. It was a slow period, and as I prepared an espresso for myself and offered him a coffee, which he accepted after initial reluctance, he told me about Lily's small birthday celebration. How they'd made paper crowns and had a tea party with her stuffed animals. How she'd blown out candles stuck into the walnut bread because he couldn't afford a cake. She didn't mind, he assured me, perhaps seeing something in my expression. Kids are resilient. She makes the best of things. Sounds like you both do, I observed. A shadow crossed his face. We try. It's been a rough year. I wanted to ask more, but customers began trickling in, and Dylan took the cue to leave. He selected a chocolate cupcake with rainbow sprinkles, paid with the money from the envelope, and thanked me again with a sincerity that stayed with me long after he'd gone. I didn't mention the incident to Frank or Diane. It felt private somehow, this small connection with a stranger who wasn't quite a stranger anymore. But over the next week, I found myself watching the door more often than usual, wondering if Dylan would return. He did, exactly 1 week after our first encounter. This time, he came during the morning rush, joining the line of commuters seeking their caffeine and carbohydrate fix. When he reached the counter, his smile was cautious but genuine. Good morning, I said, oddly pleased to see him. What can I get you today? Just a coffee, please. Black. He placed exact change on the counter. As I prepared his order, I noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. How's Lily? I asked, handing him the steaming cup. Surprise flickered across his face, followed by warmth. She's good. Started kindergarten last month. Loves it so far. And you? The question was personal, perhaps too much so for what was still essentially a customer interaction, but I couldn't help myself. He shrugged, a gesture that seemed to encompass too much to put into words. Managing. Actually, I was wondering. He hesitated, then continued in a rush. If you know anywhere hiring? I've been picking up odd jobs, but nothing steady. The request caught me off guard. What kind of work are you looking for? Anything at this point. I've done construction, warehouse work, some kitchen experience as a line cook. He paused, embarrassment coloring his features. I know it's a lot to ask, given how we met. But you seemed kind, and I thought maybe. I made a split-second decision. We might need someone, actually. Frank, the owner, mentioned needing extra help for the holiday season. It would just be part-time at first, probably early mornings. Hope brightened his eyes. Early mornings are perfect. Lily's with her grandmother before school anyway. Come by tomorrow afternoon, I said. I'll introduce you to Frank. No promises, but he's a good judge of character. Thank you, Dylan said, his gratitude almost palpable. Really thank you. After he left, I wondered if I'd overstepped. Frank and Diane valued my input, but hiring someone I'd caught stealing seemed questionable at best. Still, something told me Dylan was worth taking a chance on. The next day, I arrived early to speak with Frank before Dylan's unofficial interview. I explained the situation honestly, how I'd caught Dylan stealing bread for his daughter's birthday, how he'd returned to pay for it, and my instinct that he was someone struggling through hard times rather than a habitual thief. Frank, with his salt and pepper beard and kind eyes, listened without interruption. You've always been a good judge of character, Trevor, he said when I finished. If you think he deserves a chance, I'm willing to meet him. Dylan arrived precisely at the time I'd suggested, wearing the same carefully pressed shirt and an expression of nervous determination. He brought a creased resume that showed scattered employment over the past year. Exactly the kind of work history that might make other employers hesitate. Frank interviewed him in the small office at the back of the bakery while I managed the front. When they emerged 30 minutes later, Frank's arm was around Dylan's shoulders, and both were smiling. Trevor, Frank called, show our new team member around, will you? Dylan starts tomorrow, 5 a.m. sharp. Relief washed over Dylan's face as Frank returned to the office. I can't believe it, he said quietly. Thank you for this opportunity. I won't let you down. Thank Frank, I said, though I couldn't help feeling pleased. And yourself. He doesn't hire people he doesn't believe in. Still, I know you put in a good word. I won't forget it. As I showed him around the bakery, explaining the equipment, the routines, where supplies were kept, I found myself noticing details I'd missed in our previous brief encounters. The way his hands, though roughened by labor, moved with unexpected grace. The small scar near his right eyebrow. The careful way he listened, asking thoughtful questions about procedures and expectations. Early shift means you'll be here before anyone but the bakers, I explained. You'll help with prep, then transition to counter service when we open at 7. It's fast-paced, but satisfying work. I'm not afraid of hard work, he assured me. And the schedule is perfect. I can be home by the time Lily gets out of school. She lives with just you? I asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. Sorry, that's none of my business. It's fine, he said, though a flicker of something, pain, perhaps, crossed his face. Yes, it's just us now. Her mother left about a year ago. The divorce was finalized in May. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. That must be tough. He nodded, a tight motion that suggested there was more to the story. We're adjusting. Lily's the priority now. I wanted to ask more, but sensed he'd shared as much as he was comfortable with. Instead, I finished the tour, gave him his apron and name tag, and confirmed his start time for the following day. Get some rest tonight, I advised as he prepared to leave. First day is always the most exhausting. I will, he promised. At the door, he paused. Trevor, thank you again. Not just for the job, but for that first day. Most people would have called security. Most people haven't been where you are, I said simply. See you tomorrow, Dylan. Dylan proved to be an excellent addition to the wheat rye team. He arrived early each day, worked diligently, and learned quickly. His previous kitchen experience showed in his efficiency and attention to detail. Within 2 weeks, Frank was giving him additional responsibilities, training him on the register, teaching him basic bread preparation, even letting him experiment with some display arrangements that proved popular with customers. I found myself looking forward to the morning shifts we shared. There was something calming about working alongside Dylan in the pre-dawn quiet, preparing for the day while the rest of the world slept. We developed an easy rhythm, moving around each other in the limited space behind the counter, anticipating needs without having to voice them. Gradually, our professional relationship evolved into something more personal. Brief conversations during breaks revealed shared interests, a love of obscure indie bands, a preference for science fiction over fantasy, the same dry sense of humor. I learned that before his marriage fell apart, Dylan had been pursuing a degree in graphic design, that Lily had inherited his artistic talent and covered their refrigerator with drawings, that he missed creating but had put aside his own ambitions to focus on providing stability for his daughter. In turn, I shared pieces of myself I rarely discussed with coworkers, my abandoned culinary school dreams, my strained relationship with my father, my recent breakup with a boyfriend who'd wanted more commitment than I felt ready to give. Dylan didn't blink at this revelation, just nodded and said, his loss, with a sincerity that warmed me unexpectedly. As November progressed, bringing with it the first whispers of holiday preparations, I noticed subtle changes in Dylan. The perpetual tension in his shoulders had eased. He smiled more readily, laughed more often. The dark circles under his eyes faded as regular paychecks presumably alleviated some of his financial stress. One evening, as we closed up shop together, Dylan had gradually transitioned to a mixed schedule that included some closing shifts. He mentioned that Lily had a school event the following night, a kindergarten Thanksgiving pageant. She's playing a turkey, he said with paternal pride. She's been practicing her gobbling for weeks. Sounds adorable, I replied, imagining a miniature version of Dylan in a construction paper costume. It will be, if I can make it. A shadow crossed his face. My mother usually watches Lily when I work late, but she's not feeling well. I was going to ask Frank if I could leave early tomorrow, but he's taking Diane to the doctor. I could cover for you, I offered without hesitation. What time's the pageant? Dylan looked surprised. You do that? It's at 6, so I need to leave by 5:30 at the latest. Of course. It's no problem. You shouldn't miss your daughter being a turkey. That's core memory material right there. His smile then, wide, unguarded, reaching all the way to his eyes, did something peculiar to my chest. Thank you, he said. Seriously, Trevor. This means a lot. It's what friends do, I replied, though as the words left my mouth, I wondered if friends accurately described what we were becoming. The next evening, as Dylan prepared to leave for the pageant, he hesitated by the counter where I was serving the last few customers of the day. I was thinking, he said, adjusting his scarf against the November chill. Lily and I usually get pizza after these school things. As a small thank you, would you want to join us? Only if you're free, of course. The invitation caught me off guard. Meeting Lily would shift our relationship into new territory, beyond coworkers, beyond casual friends. It felt significant in a way I couldn't quite articulate. I'd like that, I heard myself say. Text me the address. I can meet you after I close up here. Dylan's face brightened. Great. It's nothing fancy, just Gino's on Maple. Lily's obsessed with their cheese pizza. Gino's is perfect, I assured him. Now go, or you'll miss the grand turkey entrance. After he left, I found myself moving through closing procedures with unusual efficiency, eager to join them. It had been months since I'd done anything social outside of work. The realization was mildly depressing. When had I become someone whose life revolved entirely around a bakery? Gino's was a family-style pizzeria with red checkered tablecloths and walls covered in signed photos of local celebrities. I spotted Dylan immediately, sitting at a corner booth with a small dark-haired girl who was animatedly describing something, complete with expansive hand gestures. As I approached, Dylan looked up and smiled, a warm, welcoming expression that made my steps falter momentarily. Trevor, glad you made it. Lily, this is my friend from work I told you about. Lily turned, fixing me with a solemn stare from eyes identical to her father's, that same deep indigo blue. She wore a brown sweater with colorful feathers still attached to the sleeves, remnants of her turkey costume. Did you see me be a turkey? She asked without preamble. I'm sorry, I missed it, I admitted, sliding into the booth across from them. But your dad told me you were the best turkey in the whole show. She considered this, then nodded gravely. I was. Miss Peterson said my gobbling was exceptional. She pronounced the word carefully, clearly proud of mastering it. It really was, Dylan confirmed, his expression so full of love it was almost painful to witness. Trevor, thank you again for covering so I could be there. Any time, I said, meaning it. The evening that followed was one of the most enjoyable I'd had in recent memory. Lily, once she determined I was worthy of her attention, was a delightful companion, bright, curious, and possessed of her father's dry wit in miniature form. She informed me very seriously about the hierarchy of her stuffed animal collection, her opinion on the color purple. It's the best color because it can be both happy and sad. And her career aspirations, an artist veterinarian astronaut. Dylan watched her with undisguised adoration, occasionally catching my eye with looks that seemed to say, "Isn't she incredible?" And she was, this resilient, imaginative child who had clearly inherited the best of her father. As we shared a large cheese pizza, with mushrooms on half for the adults, I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in months. There was something refreshingly uncomplicated about sitting in a pizzeria with Dylan and Lily, discussing kindergarten politics and the merits of different pizza toppings. No pressure, no expectations, just genuine connection. When Lily excused herself to visit the restaurant's small arcade section, Dylan turned to me with a soft smile. She likes you, he said. She doesn't warm up to people easily, not since. Since her mom left? I supplied gently when he trailed off. He nodded, his expression clouding. It was messy. Rebecca, that's her mother. She struggled with addiction issues for years. I thought we could work through it together, but eventually, it became clear that staying wasn't healthy for any of us, especially Lily. He took a sip of his soda, eyes distant. She's been clean for 6 months now, which is great. She calls Lily once a week. Maybe someday she'll be stable enough for more regular visits. But for now, this arrangement works. That couldn't have been an easy decision, I said, moved by his candor. Hardest one I've ever made, he acknowledged. But seeing Lily now, happy, secure, gobbling her heart out in a turkey costume, I know it was right. I reached across the table and briefly squeezed his hand before I could overthink the gesture. You're doing a great job with her. That's obvious to anyone with eyes. The gratitude in his gaze was almost too intense to bear. Before he could respond, Lily returned, proudly displaying a small plastic ring she'd won with her arcade tickets. It's for you, she announced, placing it solemnly in my palm. Because you make the best bread, and Daddy says you're nice. Oh, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Thank you, Lily. I'll treasure it. You have to wear it, she insisted. It's magic. I dutifully slipped the plastic ring, featuring a cartoonish pizza slice, onto my pinky finger, the only one it would fit. Perfect, I declared. What kind of magic does it have? Friendship magic, she stated with the absolute certainty only a 6-year-old can muster. Now you have to be our friend forever. Dylan laughed, though I caught a hint of embarrassment in his expression. Lily, remember what we said about not being too intense with new friends? It's okay, I assured him, oddly moved by the child's declaration. I'm happy to be bound by pizza ring magic. Friendship forever sounds pretty good to me. The evening ended with promises to do it again sometime. As I walked to my car, the plastic ring still on my finger, I found myself smiling like an idiot in the cold November air. There was something about Dylan and Lily that had bypassed my usual defenses, the careful distance I'd maintained in relationships since Alex and I had split. The weeks that followed brought a shift in my relationship with Dylan. Our shared pizza dinner had opened a door to a more personal connection. We began texting outside of work. Nothing dramatic, just small observations about our days, funny customer stories, music recommendations. He sent me pictures of Lily's latest art projects. I shared recipes I thought he might enjoy trying with her. At the bakery, we maintained professional boundaries, but there were moments, a lingering glance, a casual touch that lasted a beat too long, an inside joke exchanged during a quiet moment that suggested something was developing beyond friendship. Frank noticed, of course. One afternoon in early December, as we prepared for the holiday rush, he cornered me in the storage room. So, you and Dylan, he said, no preamble, his eyes twinkling with mischief. What about us? I replied, attempting nonchalance while rearranging bags of flour with unnecessary attention. Trevor, I've known you for 5 years. I haven't seen you look at anyone the way you look at him when you think no one's watching. He crept up my neck. We're friends, I said, which was true but felt inadequate. Frank's laugh was gentle. If you say so, just know that, Diane, and I think he's wonderful. And we haven't seen you this happy in a long time. I couldn't deny it. I was happier. There was a lightness to my days that had been absent before Dylan and Lily entered my life. Still, I hesitated to act on the growing attraction. Dylan's life was complicated enough without adding a workplace romance to the mix. And while I was certain of my own feelings, I was less sure of his. The occasional lingering looks and touches could be my imagination, projection of what I wanted to see. The decision was made for me the week before Christmas. The bakery was chaos, holiday orders stacked high, customers lining out the door for our special seasonal treats, the kitchen running at full capacity from dawn until closing. Dylan and I had been working 12-hour shifts, collapsing into exhaustion at the end of each day. It was late, nearly 10, when we finally finished cleaning up after a particularly grueling day. Snow had been falling steadily since afternoon, transforming the street outside into a postcard-perfect winter scene. Dylan had been quieter than usual all day, a tension around his eyes that concerned me. "Everything okay?" I asked as we prepared to leave, bundling up against the cold. He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not really. My mother slipped on some ice yesterday. Broke her hip. She's in the hospital, and they're talking about rehab after." "Dylan, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you say something earlier? You could have taken time off." "We're too busy right now, and I need the hours," he said simply. "Plus, there's nothing I can do at the hospital that's not already being done. But it does create a problem for tomorrow. She was supposed to watch Lily while I worked." "What about a neighbor? Or a babysitter?" I suggested. "On short notice, right before Christmas?" He sighed. "I've been calling around all day. No luck so far." "I could watch her," I offered without thinking. "Tomorrow's my day off anyway." Dylan stared at me. "You do that? Watch Lily all day? Why not? We're friends, right? Friends help each other out." I tried to keep my tone casual, though my heart was racing at the prospect of taking such a significant step into their lives. "Trevor," he said, my name sounding different somehow in his voice. I can't ask you to give up your day off." "You didn't ask." I offered. I smiled, trying to ease the intensity that had suddenly sprung up between us. "Besides, Lily and I are bound by pizza ring magic, remember? I'm pretty sure babysitting falls under those obligations." A laugh escaped him, breaking the tension. "If you're sure, it would be an enormous help. She's on winter break, so she'll be home all day." "I'm sure," I said. "Just text me your address and what time you need me there." We stepped outside into the swirling snow, the street quiet under its white blanket. As we prepared to head in opposite directions to our respective cars, Dylan suddenly turned back. "Trevor," he said, his voice barely audible above the soft hush of falling snow. "Thank you for everything. These past months you've been—" He trailed off, seemingly at a loss for words. Before I could respond, he closed the distance between us and, with a gentleness that took my breath away, pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was brief, tentative, a question rather than a statement. When he pulled back, his eyes searched mine, vulnerable and hopeful. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "But if I've misread this, if you don't," I answered by kissing him back, more firmly this time, my gloved hands coming up to frame his face. His arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer as snowflakes melted between us. When we separated, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "Well," he said softly, "that answers that question." "Pretty definitively," I agreed, unable to stop smiling despite the cold numbing my face. We stood there for a moment, reluctant to break the spell that had fallen over us in the snowy stillness. "I should go," he finally said. "Lily's grandmother is with her, but she can't stay too late." "Tomorrow," I promised, squeezing his hand. "We'll figure everything out tomorrow." The next day brought a new kind of nervousness as I knocked on the door of Dylan's apartment at 7:30 a.m. It was a modest two-bedroom in an older building, decorated for Christmas with what looked like mostly handmade ornaments and paper snowflakes taped to the windows. Dylan opened the door, already dressed for work in his wheat rye uniform, his hair still damp from the shower. "You're a lifesaver," he greeted me, ushering me inside. "Coffee's ready, and Lily's just finishing breakfast. I've written down her schedule, emergency contacts, everything you might need." The apartment was small but meticulously kept, with furniture that had seen better days but was clean and comfortable. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, and a small Christmas tree sat in the corner, decorated with a charming mix of store-bought and handmade ornaments. Lily, seated at the kitchen table in pajamas featuring cartoon dinosaurs wearing Santa hats, looked up as I entered. "Trevor," she exclaimed with genuine delight. "Daddy said you're staying with me today? We can make cookies and watch movies and draw pictures. Sounds like a full agenda." I laughed, hanging my coat on a hook by the door. Dylan gave me a grateful smile over his daughter's head. "I've already told her you're in charge, and she needs to listen to you. Right, Lily?" She nodded solemnly. "I'll be very good. Trevor has the friendship ring, so he's basically family." The simple statement, delivered with a child's unquestioning certainty, created a lump in my throat. Dylan's expression softened as our eyes met over Lily's head. "Basically family," he repeated quietly. "That's right. After reviewing Lily's schedule and promising to text updates throughout the day, Dylan prepared to leave. At the door, he hesitated, then leaned in and kissed me quickly, a casual gesture that nonetheless sent warmth spreading through my chest. "Thank you for this," he said. "I owe you." "Go," I shooed him out. "We'll be fine." The day with Lily proved to be one of the most enjoyable I'd had in recent memory. We baked chocolate chip cookies. Her stirring technique was enthusiastic if somewhat messy, built a blanket fort in the living room, and watched her favorite holiday movie twice in a row. She showed me her collection of stuffed animals, each with its own elaborate backstory, and insisted I help her create a get-well card for her grandmother. Throughout the day, I sent Dylan photos, Lily with flour on her nose, our impressive blanket architecture, the two of us making silly faces at the camera. His responses were immediate and grateful, full of heart emojis and expressions of amazement at how well we were getting along. In the quiet afternoon while Lily napped, though she'd insisted she was too big for naps, she'd fallen asleep halfway through our second movie viewing. I took the opportunity to explore the apartment a bit more. The living room bookshelves held an eclectic mix: parenting books, graphic novels, art references, and a surprising number of cookbooks. A drafting table sat in the corner, covered with sketches and design work, evidence of Dylan's creative side that he rarely mentioned. In the kitchen, while washing our baking dishes, I noticed a calendar on the wall with carefully noted appointments, school events, and bill due dates. The refrigerator held simple, economical groceries and a meal plan written in Dylan's neat handwriting. Everything spoke of careful planning, of stretching resources, of putting Lily's needs first. By the time Dylan returned home, exhausted but grateful, Lily and I had dinner waiting. Nothing fancy, just pasta with sauce I'd found in the freezer, clearly homemade in batches for busy evenings. "You cooked too?" Dylan asked incredulously as he hung up his coat. "Trevor, you're making the rest of us look bad." Lily did most of the work, I assured him, watching as she ran to hug her father. "I just supervised boiling water. I stirred the sauce," she announced proudly. "And I only spilled a little bit." Dylan scooped her up, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "That's my girl. Did you have fun with Trevor today?" "The most fun," she declared. "Can he babysit every day?" Dylan laughed, catching my eye over her head. "I think Trevor has his own life, sweetie. But maybe he can visit us again soon." "Actually," I said, surprising myself with my boldness, "I was thinking maybe both of you might want to come to my place this weekend. I have a real Christmas tree that needs decorating, and I'm terrible at it. I could use expert help." Dylan's expression warmed. "We would love that. Wouldn't we, Lily? Can I put the star on top?" she asked eagerly. "You're the only one qualified for such an important job," I assured her. After dinner and Lily's bedtime routine, Dylan and I finally had a moment alone. We sat on his worn sofa, a respectable distance between us that gradually disappeared as our conversation deepened. "Thank you for today," he said, his hand finding mine in the space between us. "Lily can't stop talking about how much fun she had." "The feeling's mutual," I assured him. "She's an amazing kid, Dylan. You've done an incredible job with her." "I'm trying," he said, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "Some days are harder than others. Before I found the job at the bakery, there were times I wasn't sure how we'd make it through the month." I squeezed his hand. "But you did. And you don't have to do it alone anymore." He looked up sharply at that, his eyes searching mine. "What are you saying exactly?" "I'm saying I care about you. Both of you." The admission felt both terrifying and liberating. "I know it's complicated. I know there's Lily to consider, and work, and 100 other factors. But last night in the snow, and today with Lily, it felt right. It felt like something I want to explore, if you do too." Dylan was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm. "I haven't felt this way about anyone since before my marriage fell apart," he finally said. "And even then, it wasn't like this. This feels different. Better." He met my gaze directly. "But you're right, it is complicated. Lily has to be my priority. And if we try this, and it doesn't work out, then we'll handle it like adults," I said firmly. "I would never do anything to hurt Lily. Or you." "I believe that," he said softly. "Which is kind of amazing, considering how we met." I laughed, the tension breaking. "Not exactly a conventional meet-cute, is it?" He caught me stealing bread, and the rest is history. "When I think about that night," Dylan said, his expression growing serious again, How desperate I was. How ashamed I felt when you caught me. I never could have imagined we'd end up here. Me neither, I admitted. But I'm glad we did. This time when we kissed, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty, just the certainty of something right finally falling into place. His hands cradled my face with a tenderness that made my chest ache, and I pulled him closer, wanting to erase any remaining distance between us. Stay, he whispered against my lips. Not for anything. Just stay. It's late, and it's still snowing. I nodded, unable to refuse him anything in that moment. We shared his bed that night, fully clothed, just holding each other in the darkness as snow continued to fall outside the window. There would be time for more later. This, the simple comfort of his heartbeat against my chest, his breath warm against my neck, was enough for now. In the morning, I woke to find Lily standing beside the bed, regarding us with curious eyes. Are you and Daddy having a sleepover? She asked, her head tilted in question. Dylan stirred beside me, blinking awake to find his daughter's face inches from his. Morning, Lillipad, he murmured, sitting up slowly. Yes, Trevor stayed over because of the snow. Is that okay with you? She considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old can muster. Does this mean Trevor is your boyfriend now? Like how Emma's mom has a boyfriend who takes them to the zoo. Dylan shot me an apologetic glance, but I just smiled, waiting to hear his answer. Would it be okay if he was? Dylan asked carefully. Lily nodded enthusiastically. Yes. Then he can come to my school play and help with my art projects and make pancakes on Sundays. Emma's mom's boyfriend makes pancakes with chocolate chips and bananas. Well, I do make pretty good pancakes, I offered, catching Dylan's eye with a smile. It's settled then, Lily announced with finality. Trevor is your boyfriend, and he's going to make us pancakes. Can they have chocolate chips and bananas? Dylan laughed, the sound full and genuine. Why don't you go pick out your clothes for today, and we'll discuss pancake toppings in a minute. After she bounded out of the room, Dylan turned to me, his expression a mix of amusement and apology. Sorry about that. Kids have no filter. No need to apologize, I assured him, taking his hand. Though I feel like I've been given a pretty serious promotion without an interview process. Boyfriend is a big step up from bread thief catcher. His laugh warmed me from the inside out. Well, consider this your formal interview question. Dylan Matthews, would you like to be my boyfriend, complete with school plays, art projects, and occasional pancake duties? I pretended to consider the offer seriously. Are benefits included in this position? Extensive, he promised, leaning closer. Full dental, emotional support, and unlimited access to the most amazing 6-year-old on the planet. In that case, I said, closing the distance between us, I accept the position. Our kiss was interrupted by Lily calling from the other room, asking if pancakes could also have sprinkles on them. Dylan rested his forehead against mine, laughing softly. Welcome to the family, he whispered. Hope you know what you're getting into. As I followed him to the kitchen, watching as he and Lily debated the merits of various pancake toppings with equal seriousness, I realized that I did know, perhaps better than I'd ever known anything. This complicated, beautiful, unexpected family that had begun with a stolen loaf of bread was exactly where I wanted to be. 6 months later, as summer warmed the city, Dylan and Lily moved into my apartment. The transition wasn't without challenges. Merging lives rarely is, but the joy far outweighed the difficulties. My space, once so carefully ordered and solitary, came alive with Lily's artwork, Dylan's books, and the beautiful chaos of family life. At Wheat Rye, Frank and Diane were unsurprised by the development. Saw it coming from a mile away, Frank declared when we finally told them we were officially together. Best decision you ever made, hiring that bread thief. Dylan blushed at the reminder, but there was no shame in it anymore. Just a shared story of how our lives had intersected at exactly the right moment. One evening, as summer faded into early autumn, we celebrated Lily's 7th birthday with a proper party, friends from school, a cake I'd baked myself, and presents wrapped in brightly colored paper. As the children played in the park near our apartment, Dylan slipped his hand into mine. Happy? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the contentment in his eyes. More than I thought possible, he admitted. A year ago, I was stealing bread because I couldn't afford a birthday cake for my daughter. Now look at us. I followed his gaze to where Lily was showing her friends how to make daisy chains, her laughter carrying across the grass. We've come a long way. Thank you, he said simply, for taking a chance on the desperate guy with the stolen walnut bread. Best decision I ever made, I replied, echoing Frank's words. Though next time, maybe just ask for the bread? I'm pretty sure I would have given it to you anyway. Dylan laughed, pulling me closer. No more stealing, I promise. Everything I need, I already have right here. As Lily ran over to show us her flower crown, her face alight with joy, I knew it was true for all of us. What had begun as an act of desperation had transformed into something none of us could have anticipated, a family, built not of traditional bonds, but of choice and chance and love that arrived in the most unexpected package. Sometimes the most precious things in life begin with the smallest acts of kindness. Or, in our case, with a loaf of stolen bread that led to a heart that was found.